want a little affection.
Get your hands off her.
Sam the Slayer. You're gonna slay me with that sword?
It's the first time that we really see Sam overestimate himself. I think that ever since we first saw Sam in season 1, he's been somebody who's been very, very aware of his strengths and very, very aware of his weaknesses.
I'm a coward.
When you see Sam, somebody physically weak, try and take on two very, very ruthless trained killers in your name, that's when you start to feel he's really genuinely taking care of you.
I said, get your hands off her.
She's actually really angry with him because he could have gotten himself killed and he's the person that can protect her baby.
Promise me, whatever happens, you'll take care of little Sam.
These are two people who never expected that romance of any kind, love of any kind, was going to come into their lives. That kiss was not something that was planned or that either one of them had been dreaming of.
So Sam's patience, letting their relationship breathe and letting that bond be formed organically, really comes into fruition. He just really has her best interests at heart, and he knows what it is.
Did for it, which is a pretty major sacrifice that's hard to imagine anybody else in the history of this show making.
In a world where most people take sides very strongly and are willing to fight to the death for whatever side they're on, Eamon has been someone who's seen the value of compromise. He's seen the bigger picture in a way that very few characters have. It's a real tragedy for all of Castle Black, especially though for Sam, because he's lost really his only friend now at the castle. I mean, with John gone to Hardhome, and aside from Gilly, there was no one else in the Night's Watch who Sam can really trust.
On the day of the great games, gather all the great masters and wise masters and worthy masters you can find, and slaughter them all.
I am a queen, not a butcher.
All rulers are either butchers or meat.
I think Dany's not quite at that cynical level yet. She still believes that there is a higher purpose that she's there for. It's not just about power, it's about using that power to make humanity better.
It's somebody telling you one of those horrible things that's all the more horrible because you suspect that it's true. And she, as an idealist, wants desperately to believe that that's not the case. But in their relationship, Daario is really one of the only people, the only person around her now who tells her all the things she doesn't want to hear.
So she's not yet convinced that she needs to be a butcher. At the same time, she realizes, or comes to realize, the longer the season goes on, that she has to be ruthless at times in order to maintain security, in order to keep herself in power. So if that means that some masters are going to get sacrificed to her dragons, so be it.
Strip away the gold and the ornaments, knock down the statues and the pillars, and this is what remains. Something simple, solid, and true.
The altar in the scene to the High Sparrow represents everything that's good about the faith, everything that the faith should go back to, the kind of anonymity that comes with true humility. And I think he chose this chapel as the place to spring his actual plans for Cersei on Cersei very intentionally.
What will we find when we strip away your finery?
From the High Sparrow's perspective, Cersei is a symbol of everything that's gone wrong with this country. She's someone who's taken power with complete cynicism, who doesn't have any faith, who's been not only an adulteress, but an incestuous adulteress. And what makes matters worse for her is that she brought...
He's gonna die, so it doesn't matter. I think he wants to have one last chance to prove his love to Daenerys, visibly. It's like his ride off into the sunset. You know, if I'm gonna die, I might as well do something big, make some big grand gesture to the person I love. On to number 6 though, Tyrion explains to Daenerys why she can't just march into Westeros. This is all about the difference between gaining the support of the people versus the support of the nobles. Tyrion explains to her that, you know, she's freed all the slaves in Saber's Bay, so they love her, but all the nobles still hate her. She's got that big problem in Meereen right now. Remember, Daario wanted her to pull a red wedding moment and kill all the heads of the houses in the city. Tyrion was just reminding her that politics are a much bigger deal in Westeros. She's gonna need support from the nobles. He's valuable to her because politics are what he does really well, but it was fun seeing them chat together. Two terrible children of two terrible fathers. And if you didn't recognize it, whenever she was giving that speech, you know, I'm not going to stop the wheel, I'm going to break it, that was from the trailer. You could take that to mean a lot of different things. I feel like Daenerys, in her own mind, thinks that she's going to march into Westeros and get rid of a lot of the inequalities between the really rich people and the really poor people. Tyrion actually suggested to her that she stay in the East. Maybe this is where you belong. But as Daenerys said, this is not my home. That's basically the show telling you that no, she will not stay put forever. Eventually they will make their way to Westeros, but that's still a long ways off. I feel like that's not going to happen for a while. Remember, in order to get all those people over to Westeros, they still need ships, which they do not have right now. That seems like a season 6 problem to solve. I think the funniest part though was when Tyrion said, "The only person I trust more than Varys is my brother." And Daenerys is like, "You mean the one that killed my father?" And he's like, Yep, that's the one. Moving on to number 5, Sansa finds out that her brothers are not dead. She seems like she's getting stabbier and stabbier, so I'm hoping at some point she just snaps and does some sort of Reek-type torture upon Ramsay or Miranda or even Theon himself. It would definitely go a long ways towards addressing some of the issues with Sansa this season so far. She's kind of backslid a little bit. I mean, she started in a really powerful place. Then we got onto all this Ramsay business, and now it finally looks like she's going to do something about it. But you just get that glimmer of hope in her eye where she's like, wait a minute, my brothers are still alive? Where did they go? Everybody always asks me about Rickon, like where is Rickon? So in the context of the story, he is just with Osha hiding off on an island. Both the show and George R. R. Martin just don't need him. The story doesn't need him right now, so he'll probably come back at some point, or he could just live on that island for the rest of his life. And yes, his direwolf Shaggy Dog is still alive too. Bran, of course, is up training with the Three-Eyed Raven way north of the Wall. He won't be back till season 6, but he will be back because he's a really important character. On to number 4. Arya gets ready to take her first mission, taking on a new identity in the process. As predicted, it doesn't look like she's going to be changing her face, but she does have a new costume, like she has a new look. This was actually on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, like before the start of the season. You could see that, when she was talking to Jaqen, she almost has it down cold. She makes a few slip-ups, but she's got this persona. I love how the waif objected to Jaqen, and he just said, well, it's all the same to the many-faced god, whether she lives or dies. That might seem kind of bleak, but it just shows you how stone cold the Faceless Men are. They believe in justice, that's what Arya's mission is all about, but they're not really about sentiment. Don't expect any hugs from them. I think my favorite thing about the Arya scene, though, was the way they edited it. Just the way you get to see Arya in this persona while Arya in third person was narrating it to Jaqen. Moving on to number 3. Pretty much everybody is telling Cersei to confess her crimes before the trial. This was a nice follow-up to the moment where she almost hallucinated Arya. The way they edited it, it made it seem that way. She wasn't actually hallucinating Arya, but it's a nice follow-up on Arya's prayer, because Cersei is definitely high on that list. So we have Qyburn telling Cersei that in no uncertain terms, she will not get a fair trial, so the only way out is to confess. It's a little hard to tell, which crimes of Cersei's that they know about right now. Qyburn said that they know about the incest and King Robert's death, but those are all things that Lancel told them. I don't think Lancel knows about all of Jaime and Cersei's children, so when they say incest, just forget about that briefly. The only way that they would find out about that is if Cersei were to confess that. Really, this was a battle between Cersei and that nun. It was kind of like they were playing the game of faces, like she was just getting whacked and whacked and whacked for not confessing. One of the best Cersei scenes this week, though, was when she got so desperate that she was sucking water off the floor of the black cells. The show doesn't do it justice. These are literally the dirtiest places you could go to, aside from maybe Flea Bottom. On to number 3, Ollie asks Samwell why Jon has to help the wildlings. In every episode since Jon announced his plan, whenever Ollie shows up, he just keeps coming back to this. They killed my family. Why are you doing this? There is definitely a reason for this, because Ollie's actually a really small character. He's probably going to end up doing something really crazy that gets tied up in a big book plot that I won't get into just to avoid spoilers. Here's the thing about where Ollie's headspace is right now and what Samwell told him. You have to think about making hard choices, things that seem wrong now, but in the long term are right. Samwell was talking about Jon getting the wildlings. That obviously, very hard thing to do right now, but long term they need them to fight the White Walkers. Ollie, though, in a really nasty twist of that, is probably thinking the exact opposite thing. He's going to do something to satisfy his need for revenge in the short term that will wind up in the long term being really, really bad. I don't want to make too many predictions on what those long-term consequences of what Ollie does could be. We'll have to wait till after the finale, though, but that's something really interesting that you guys should all remember. On to number 2. Jon Snow arrives at Hardhome with Tormund Giantsbane. They're greeted, of course, by the Lord of Bones, which we haven't seen in forever. I think the last time we saw him was when Jon first tried to infiltrate Mance's camp way, way back. The Lord of Bones is like the Wildlings version of Ollie. He's like, I don't understand why we have to do this. This is bull crap. Look at that pretty crow you have there. Until Tormund just beats the crap out of him with his own weapon. Everything that happened in that meeting with the elders is just to show us on screen the consequences of what happens when you don't work together. Just speaking in terms of numbers, Jon said about 5,000 people agreed to go with them, not including Thenns. Thenns definitely against working with the crows, which I thought was really funny that he dubbed Jon King Crow. You could twist that metaphor into a Night's King reference, because he was a crow himself and he was commander of the Night's Watch just like Jon is. But they have about 5,000 wildlings, and when you look at the shoreline, you can see just bodies for miles. Too bad it seems like 90% of those people are now whites in the army of the Night's King. I know as that they were running away, it seems like they left the Dragonglass, but remember, Stannis said that Dragonstone is full of Dragonglass, so they can go get more if they need to. The battle itself was the hardest thing for them to shoot this season. In terms of time, it took the longest. I mean, the episodes typically take anywhere between 8 and 2 weeks to film. This was almost twice that. But finally, my number one WTF, the Night's King takes a weird interest in Jon Snow. Notice how long his gaze lingers on Jon Snow as he shatters a regular White Walker with his blade, with Longclaw. The reason they showed the White Walker shattering regular weapons